What's up, everybody? And today we're talking about They Will Kill You. So, when I originally saw this trailer, I was like, oh, okay. And me and a lot of people in the comments were like, basically, this feels like Ready or Not, but with a black girl in a hotel. And I was like, okay, cool. I like Ready or Not as it is. I think, what I gave it, like a 7.5 out of 10. So I was like, okay, cool, let's check this one out. And so I watched it, and it is a fun movie, but I think it has some issues, but we'll kind of be into it. So if you haven't watched the trailer, basically the premise is you have this girl named Asia, played by Zazie Beetz, and she gets estranged from her sister. I won't say why, because we'll start spoiler free, but she, tracks her sister down to essentially this hotel. And there are some strange things going on in this hotel. And so she is basically trying to find her sister and fight her way out of this building. And so that's basically what the premise of the movie is. So like I was saying, I'm going to start spoiler free. If you want spoilers, feel free to just skip ahead. Spoiler free, I think that this movie is a lot of fun. The way that the camera is set up, the way that the shots are, the way that the camera moves, I'm not a big film person, so I'm sure there's technical terms for all this, but the way that, some of the shots, the way the camera moves, the action, it's very it felt very 80s movie, sometimes a little bit of that Tarantino, Kill Bill style, there's a part where someone gets, stabbed or something like that, or I think they get cut or whatever, and there's blood spraying. It's a little over the top. So if you are able to kind of shut off your brain just to be along for the ride, again, like an 80s movie where it's it's this mixture of thriller because she is being hunted for her life, but there's a bit of kind of silliness to all of this. It's a fun ride. But I don't think there's enough in here to be oh my God, that's so amazing. I'm going to watch this every year, or something of you gotta tell somebody to come watch this. I think this is a fun, you put this on a Sunday or whatever and you have a good time, but it's not something too memorable. But I could also see, and I don't know if these even really exist anymore, but if this came out earlier in the timeline of life, this could be a cult classic, because there is a lot of fun to this movie, but I just don't think it has enough of this stuff to really bring it home. I think if I had to give this a rating off the top, I'd probably give it a 6.5 out of 10. I just think there are some things that this movie just doesn't do. The negatives of this movie are I just don't think you spend enough time with anyone to really make a meaningful connection. I know she is after her sister, but I don't think that they spend enough time together. And then granted, the part is, they've been estranged, but I just don't feel like I really got to know anybody, and even the villains, it's okay, cool. I've seen, we got Tom Felton, aka Malfoy. If you've seen Harry Potter, you got Patricia Arquette, who I've seen in several things. Zazie Beetz is the main character, and so you've seen these people before, and maybe some things here and there, but I just don't think anyone was kind of a standout. And granted, I think that's the point of the movie. Again, I think it's just this fun ride, but because there's not something to really attach yourself to other than the movie just being fun, it's just kind of okay, cool, I did that, and I'm out. So I think that's lacking. The explanation for why Zazie Beetz' character is able to kind of defend herself from this crazy situation is just I don't think that's enough logic. Even though this is a over the top, I don't think that's a good reason for her to be able to do the things that she is doing. The main villain makes a choice at some point, and I was just I feel you made that so easily. You didn't even think about it. And granted, I know that the movie sets up why she might be whatever, I'm just going to do this. But I just felt a lot of the characters, there's two characters in particular, the main villain and, kind of someone on her team who makes some choices. And it's just I don't know how you got here. You're just saying oh, I got here. The movie also sets up at one point okay, cool. There's there's different levels of the hotel have a little something to them. I was okay, and then they do nothing with that. One of my problems is I'm very logical, is that this movie has the problem of everyone's coming after you, and when you do something Punisher: One Last Kill or John Wick 3, even going back to something like The Warriors, I think it is so hard to portray that everybody and their mom, I mean everyone is after you. And a meaningful way that it really feels like, oh my god, like what are we supposed to do? Like I can only do so much. And I always just feel like, this trope is done with like, okay, cool, they took out like a room full of people, even if it's, it could be like a good amount of people, but it's like, how do you really display like everyone is after you? And I still haven't seen like a proper, in my opinion, representation of that, even with like John Wick, and I just don't think this movie does that either. So there are just like a lot of smaller things that kind of chip away at why this movie would be kind of memorable. I don't think I'm saying that right, but I feel like you know what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna try again. So yeah, I just think that this movie just didn't really bring it home. But when I think about this movie, I do think about the ending. I think the ending, kind of like the end of the third act, it was like, oh, okay, I did not expect this. I did not expect you to go this way. This is really cool. I like this kind of like supernatural take that you're bringing to the table. Can't really say more without spoiling. Ultimately, this is a fun movie. If you like something that is kind of like this, like silly, fun, thriller, supernatural type movie, I would say to check this out. If you don't like something like Ready or Not, or just kind of like that like sillier supernatural thing, like you want something more serious, this movie is not for you. I would say to skip it. But if not, yeah, just check it out and let me know what you think, if you really enjoyed it or not. I feel like the ratings so far have kind of been what I said, around like a 6 or a 7. So again, this didn't really set the world on fire. Granted, I believe this came out around or the weekend of Ready or Not too, so I don't think that helped of like, hey, we got the same movie over here. But what I will say before I go into spoilers is that like this movie is so fun, and I was like, oh, I hope this guy gets more stuff, because I looked and I think he's like Russian, so all his other films have been Russian, and I was like, I can see, stick with me everybody, the way that this is like a thriller and there's like a little bit of silliness. I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of like the latest Resident Evil movie or video game, where there's like, I haven't played it yet, but there's like 2 characters. You got the one girl who's like really scared, and she's like, for her it's like a horror movie. And then you got the guy, Leon, if you haven't played the game, and he is just like roundhousing zombies, and he's popping them in the head, and he's making like one-liners. He blasts one's head off, and he's like, guess you didn't have a good head on your shoulders, like type stuff. And so when I saw this movie, I was like, oh, I think he could do a really good like Resident Evil movie if he is given the chance, because he can do a mixture of thriller and a little bit of that, like, again, comedy. I don't know how to really say it. I would love to see him have like something like that. Granted, there is a Resident Evil movie coming out, but that one looks serious. I think he could do a good like adaptation if they want to do something like, oh, we're just gonna make the video game into a movie. So that's my take. Let me know. You gotta watch the movie. You gotta watch the movie though to understand what I'm talking about. We're gonna get into spoilers, everybody. I'm yapping. If you made it this far, don't forget to subscribe. All right, spoilers in 3, 2. What I liked about this movie, right? Some of them in the spoiler-free section, that I like the camera angles. There's the part where she's like crawling around with the husband, and they have the camera like, sideways, or they're shot sideways, so it looks like they're like crawling up this really long, like almost like they're climbing, upwards, like vertically. What's the word? I don't know. Like they're climbing up the building essentially, but and just like some of the way that there's someone in the vent, and the camera like zooms in really close and then like comes back out, and it's like, okay, cool. Like there's a lot of like way that the camera is moving that I'm having fun with this. The fact that she learns that, all these people are immortal because they made a deal with the devil, and so she is able to just like blast them away, or like just stab them a bunch of times, and it is just kind of like almost kind of silly, even though it is like this dark thing that's going on. She chops off the girl's hand, and it starts like, or somebody's hand, it just starts spraying. I was saying it felt like something out of Kill Bill, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm fine with this. I like that she's like kicking ass and taking names. Granted, I think her explanation being like, oh, she went to prison and now she's a bad, I'm like, no, she's acting like she's coming out of a John Wick movie. That doesn't make any sense at all. But again, if you're able to like turn off your brain, like it is just a fun time. The part where she blasts the one girl's head off, and her eye's still alive, so her eye is like rolling around, and like, oh, she's over here, and she's like, she like rolls somewhere else. It's like, all right, I found her. Like I was saying in the spoiler free, this felt like an 80s movie, like an 80s horror movie, right? This kind of like silliness of like, I was thinking of something like Nightmare on Elm Street, where it is super scary, but like if you go rewatch that movie when the girl sets up the trap in her home, it is Home Alone in that whole like, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes, right? Or I think about something like the original Scream movies where it's like, yes, there is a man chasing you, but he might trip up the stairs and then come after you. So again, there's like this little bit of silliness, but at the end of the day, it is this thriller and supernatural kind of like ride that you're on. I just don't feel like Zazie Beetz' character Asia was like as scared as she should have been in the beginning. Like she was scared, but I wanted her to be like, what the actual like fuck it, like out of her mind, like what's going on? And then as she keeps having to kill them, then we can kind of like play it up as a joke of like, oh my god, you again? Like didn't I just kill you like for the third time? You know what I'm saying? And just kind of have her slowly be desensitized into it. I felt like she was scared, but she was like terrified of like, yo, you just killed somebody. And granted, maybe you could say like, oh, she went to prison, like, but I wish they would have played it up more. I wish they would have spent more time with her and her sister. Again, because this movie is so like action packed and like, all right, we're in and we're out. I felt like I just didn't connect with anyone when the husband's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I kind of wish there was some sort of lead up into him, maybe like a montage of like, okay, we kept sacrificing, and we could see like over the years of like, and then he just kind of, you could see him like visually just kind of be like, I don't want to do this anymore, rather than him just kind of saying it. I felt when the wife killed him, I was like, why would you do, and granted she like after she's just like, what the fuck have I done? But I don't know, she did it so easily that I know they wanted to be like, oh, they've been killing for years, so for her it's just kind of like, whatever. But I wanted more of like her truly struggling to be like, I don't know if I can do this, just for her to ultimately do it anyways. And so I just feel like I didn't really connect with any of the characters, so it was like a fun ride, but it's like, I don't care to see you guys again, you know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest detriment to this movie is like, you want to spend more time with the characters when you watch a movie. That way it could, for the executives or whatever, become a franchise. So for this to just be like, all right, it's a cool time, I'm glad we did the thing, but for it to just kind of be like, all right, cool, like, they did the thing, whatever. It didn't, sit right with me, and I was just like, oh man, I wish we could have did this movie need a little extra something for me to care about the characters a little more. That being said, the memorable part of this movie is when we get to the end and we get to Satan, who like takes over the pig head where you write the names on it, and then she's like, Satan, give me powers, and she puts the pig head on, and the CG looked a little weird, but I liked the idea of like, all right, we're gonna fight this person, and then the way that he's like on the ground and like like skittering around, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then the plot twist of like, I didn't write my name, I wrote your name, and sister kills herself, and now Zazie Beetz is immortal, and she's able to set the pig head on fire, and then she was like, I like saved a piece of the skin, and then I wrote my sister's name on it, so now she's immortal too. I was like, okay, cool, like this is, there's a cool part of this movie. I just wish that the before part, we could have just spent more time just like kind of getting to know them, because even then when she's like in the ballroom or whatever and she has like the fire axe and she's like swinging and kicking ass and taking names, I was like, okay, I'm enjoying this. But again, I don't know who you are. It doesn't really make sense that you can do all this stuff coming out of prison, and why your logic would be like, I'm gonna wrap this towel around this axe and then set it on fire, because it's just like, I don't know this. Why would you logically get there? You know what I'm saying? The other thing I was saying in the spoiler-free section, if you skipped ahead, is that I just feel like it is so hard to represent anytime the story is like everyone's coming after you. I felt like, there's always the same, like, all right, they're going to destroy this like group of people, which she does in the ballroom with the axe. And then there is the part where like, they get captured and, then you see like everyone and it's like, oh no. But I wanted there to be some sort of overwhelming force to this. And I just feel like movies just aren't good at displaying this. I brought up like John Wick, The Warriors, Punisher, One Last Kill. I think it's just so hard to be like, everybody named Mom is coming after you. And then to actually display that, I feel like a lot of times it's just like, it's just not shown well. And I'm like, I kind of wish you wouldn't do this if you're not going to be like, okay, we have to find some creative ways to like, get out of this situation because there is too many people. Other than that, I was saying that like they set up that each floor is a different hell, or something like that. And so you're like, oh, this is a sex floor, and you get to see, a quick little flash of like this giant orgy that's happening. I was like, oh, okay. I wonder how they're gonna display like each floor and how she's gonna have to like get through it and all. But nope, we didn't do any of that. Okay, cool. We should have just cut out the part that each floor was like a different thing, because it's like you set up this interesting premise, and I was like waiting for like, Chekhov's gun. You set up you showed me a gun, and I was like, okay, when's it gonna go off? And then you just did do it. I was like, okay, cool. I guess all the other floors are just regular floors or whatever. And so this movie was fun. Like I was saying, the camera angles, the action, this over the topness. I love supernatural stories, so like the pig head and like these immortal beings, and the silliness of like, and like the scariness of like, I keep killing these people, like I'll blast her head off, but then you get the eye rolling, like all that stuff. I was like, all right, cool, but I just don't think I really cared about anybody. I think there was some things that are set up that just didn't go anywhere. I feel like her actions for like how action packed she is didn't make any sense, and ultimately I was just kind of like, this is fun, but I have no real desire to come back here. I was telling them in the first part that I'd probably give this movie like a 6.5 out of 10, and I feel like the the ratings, Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, also kind of gave it like the same thing, like a 6 or 7 out of 10. And it was just like, oh man, like I could see a better movie being in here. I don't know how you do it for once, but I feel like I wish it was. And I was telling them that because this movie is so like action packed and thriller and supernatural, but kind of silly sometimes, I was saying that I could see them doing a Resident Evil movie, because I think about like RE9, where it is like half Grace, who is like scared and like running around for her life, and half Leon, and he's doing backflips and shooting people with a shotgun, and making one-liners that I'm like, oh, I feel like this director could do that kind of mixture of what makes some of the Resident Evil games work. So let's give him something like that, you know what I mean? But of course there's already a Resident Evil movie coming out, but that one's more serious. I think this guy could do kind of that combination. But that being said, let me know what you think of this movie down below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? I like Ready or Not more than I like this, but I think this movie is more fun. So I mean, I definitely take this over Ready or Not too. So I would kind of do like a back, like if I was showing someone do, I'd do like Ready or Not and then like this. I would just skip Ready or Not too. I didn't like that movie. But yeah, let me know. Do you like this? Do you like this style of movie? Where it is like, a little bit of comedic, but it is ultimately scary at the end. Just let me know how you're feeling down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, peace.